Look around. Look nearby. God makes room for us to pray. God makes room for us to pray. God makes room for us to pray, and not only that, in making room for us to pray, God is making room for peace within us and around us. God is making room for peace within us and around us when God makes room for us to pray. And I'm wondering, kind of like we were wondering a bit ago, how do you pray? Do you read Scripture? Or maybe, I know a few of you do, follow Christ in Our Home, or a similar kind of devotional that you can pick up and read someone else's thoughts or meditations each day. Do you pray quietly or meditate? Do you work in the garden? That's praying. Or do you walk? Or do you sing? Do you sit at your window and watch the birds and simply feel the joy that they bring to you at this time in your life when it's feeling like a lot of the things you used to like to do you can't do anymore? But there are the birds. Do you walk under the trees until peace falls? Or do you simply say thanks? I was talking with one of you, actually it was Sharon Kinder recently, and she gave me permission to share that, but we talked about how simple prayer is. Just saying thank you to God. And remembering that God is near. God is present, moment by moment. Maybe you pray while you're crafting or quilting, carefully stitching on a piecework, taking all sorts of scraps that someone else didn't know what to do with and turning them into something whole and beautiful while you confer together, while you talk and listen and stitch along quietly. However you pray, trust that in prayer, God is making room for peace to work in and among you. In prayer, God holds us, stitches us together. Wherever two or three are gathered, after all, we hear in Matthew today, wherever two or three are gathered, we are held together in the presence of Jesus Christ. Here, on this day, we are held together in the presence of Jesus Christ, in the stillness of these trees, living trees, God making room amidst them, set aside this time for prayer where we can put down our routines and our urgencies and the little daily acts of violence we commit to ourselves and others. All these things that crowd God out of our awareness. And we are held. We are held in prayer. We are held in the presence of Christ. We are drawn into living contact with all the saints. We might taste an inner quiet or a joyful sense of peace that doesn't always stay with us, but we know is real. We know it's real. In a place like this, we might even find our own tears that we had forgotten were there, rising, telling us of our own longing for peace. What sense, what taste, what sense of peace have you received in prayer? What longing for peace have you received in prayer? God making room for peace in and amongst you. How do you return to that peace? And how do you carry it out into a world that is and feels to be in pieces? Out into a world where we know our health falls apart, or it feels that way, and our memory goes one way or another. Our jobs fall apart. Sometimes our families fall apart. A church falls apart. Sometimes that happens. Nations are at each other's throats, even within a nation, polarized. Heard about some of those. Salmon runs. I don't know how the Chinook are doing right now. Anyway. Many of us know what it's like to be caught in intractable situations that are beyond our control, where we long for peace. Situations where we ourselves maybe have contributed by the way we speak and listen or don't listen. Seeing conflicts and hurts become cycles of harm rather than opportunities for understanding or even friendship. Conflicts that could become cooperation and understanding and peace made. Well, and there's also, Facebook or what is it called now? I don't know. Anyway, Facebook, it's that important, right? And the overabundance of news, I know at least some of us like to take in a little more than is probably good for our inner sense of quiet and peace. These all seem to be a net negative for these situations in which we long. We long for peace to be made. But thanks be to God, God desires to counteract all of this, to make these situations ones where we feel we can make peace. It is in our hands. We do feel capable. God makes room for peace to work among us. Today we look in the book of Numbers, one we don't read too often, at least as Christians, but we read there about one way God counteracts all these forces that drive things apart. We read about the cities of refuge, places God invites the holy people to set aside. In them, God intends to dispel confusion and counteract cycles of violence and rage. You see, God's loving concern in the Old Testament extends very broadly: widows, orphans, strangers, the poor, and beyond. It even extends to those who are involved directly in the harm or death of another person. The cities of refuge are a way that God carefully, prayerfully quilts patches of peace into the fabric of a violent society. Patches where peace has the chance to be made. You see, within the city of refuge, the presumed killer could flee there and so be protected from the deeply grieved kin of the person who died, who may very well have been hotly and urgently seeking vengeance right now. Turn him over. In the city of refuge, God slows things down. God makes room, ample room, God even negotiates for time so that people can just stop, put down their weapons, and begin to listen. Begin to listen and to speak knowing that they will be listened to try and find the truth that is in their midst. Room and time for their wiser minds to begin to work, for their desires, their longing for healing and peace, for their grief and their hope to work. The city of refuge is an image of what Jesus calls us to be. Places, people that make room, ample time for peace to be able to work through our listening and speaking prayerfully and carefully with one another and with those we meet in this world that we know goes to pieces. I heard somewhere that God is a mighty fortress, and I'm not going to contradict that. But this piecework that Jesus calls us to might be better compared to quilting. The quilt we make is one that Jesus helps us to make. It is made carefully and prayerfully, quilting with the tools of speaking and listening truthfully, in love, giving it the time and the space that it needs, so that our story of truth and of love, so that our desires for peace might work. If you were to show up at Good Shepherd on a Wednesday, you could even join in the quilting and learn how that works and see that, at least the few times I visited, quilters aren't in a hurry. And they have a vision for something whole and beautiful that they share and they are working toward, and they listen to one another and say, well, you might want to consider doing it that way, or, oh, this is nice. Where'd you get that fabric? And they speak, and they also sit in quiet and stitch. They pray. So Jesus counsels us to be with one another at a similar pace, in a similar way. We hear in Matthew, go to the person, I'm paraphrasing, go to the person who has sinned against you, who you have something against, and tell them. Take the time to tell them how you felt when they said or did something. If that is not so well received, or it's just too scary for you to do that, well, bring a friend along who is the kind of person who can make room for you and this other person you want to talk with. Bring along the kind of person who can help you both listen to one another. Make room for one another. This scripture, Matthew 18, this scripture is a good guide not only for our life together as church, but at home or at work or at school or with our neighbors. As Christ followers, it helps us to moderate extremes and to listen and speak in ways that can lead to peace. We assume another person's good intentions going into a conversation. We speak in ways that moderate the extremes and lead to clarity. We refrain from assigning blame when it's not needed to assign. We try not to gossip. We owe each other the dignity and the trust to speak and listen directly with those concerned. This is the quilting work that Jesus calls us to do. Now, some of you might even feel like you have a calling to be that person who makes room for people who are having trouble listening. If you feel that kind of calling, you might check out this really great book called The Third Side, or this website that goes with it, The Third Side, William Ury, and it talks about 10 roles that you can try on, see if they fit the gifts God has given you to be a peacemaker, to be the kind of person who makes room so that peace can work in you and amidst you. But all of us are called to live in that peace. All of us are called to be peacemakers. And all of us are called to continue to pray, to receive the ways that God is making peace within you, within me. As we're concluding this wonderful time of sharing the peace of Christ with one another, there are a few announcements for the community. First, welcome, in case you hadn't heard that, but we'll say it again. It's worth saying again. Welcome. Pastor Carol and the Good Shepherd Pilgrims up at Holden Village send greetings to you. As we go through these announcements, the ushers will be bringing around pew pads. You can fill these out and pass them along to your neighbors. When it gets to the end of your row, you can pass it back. And in so doing, you get to know the names of the people you are sitting near, and you can communicate important information to the Good Shepherd pastors and staff. Thank you. There's a lot going on, a lot of exciting, good things, experiments, new and old things continuing at Good Shepherd these days. All of them are excellent opportunities to invite a friend or neighbor to participate. I'll highlight a few. One, coming up in August, which I think is tomorrow, our Thursday night contemplative and musical evenings under the trees. We have flyers for you to hand out and help spread the word as we invite the community to participate in this ecumenical and inclusive gathering. Monday morning coffee hour continues tomorrow at 10 a.m. Gather around the benches and picnic tables, perhaps bring a chair of your own and a friend or two. Sip some coffee, munch a donut, and enjoy conversation. We have another Wednesday Wondering this Wednesday at 6:30. Last week it was canceled because it was so hot. Like the Monday morning coffee hour, bring a chair, friend or two. We will provide pizza and time and space and room for wonderings about faith. A couple other things. Save the date. September 3rd, Good Shepherd is going to see the Tacoma Rainiers. They're playing the Sacramento River Cats. You can see Susan Peterson today about getting a ticket to go watch baseball. Yeah. Connie Klein and Lynn McCallum, who are the Gifts and Worship ministers, Gifts and Worship coordinating ministers, encourage you to, maybe Connie wants to tell you about that. Encourage you to see her or email her about opportunities to serve in worship ministry in August and beyond. There's a number of roles that you could step into and help with making this place of worship happen. This Thursday. Okay, I'm going to just emphasize that. The first contemplative service, these under the trees, that's this Thursday. This is August. Right. Tomorrow's August. You know what I'm saying. It's close. It's coming. Just to emphasize that. It's good. I really want to reach out on that.